at this time. If there are any open seats next to you, please make sure to kind of condense in with each other. It's a very large party, and we just want to make sure that all seats are available to everybody. So just cozy on up, and we'll get started very shortly. The balcony is available for seating too, but it is limited.
Excuse me. In just a few moments, the services will begin. But before they do, I'd like to ask, if you have a cell phone on you, if you wouldn't mind turning that off or setting it to silent, it'd be appreciated if it's not heard during the services. For those of you that wish to see the family before the service but were unable to, just so you know, they will greet people after the service also. And there will be times throughout the week at Chabad of East Side. So we'll give you that information after the service, but there will be plenty of time to see the family. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed leaders, community members of the greater Milwaukee area and beyond. If you're like me and you don't like listening to instructions, and Tom just asked you to put your phone down and you still haven't done it yet, I'm going to assume you are on the GoFundMe page set up to support Diana and her family. Of course, special thank you goes to Daniel, who set up the GoFundMe page, and a special thank you goes to the over 1,300 members of the Milwaukee community and beyond who found a generous place in their hearts to support the family, of course, in their time of need. If you've already donated, give yourself a pat on the back. If you haven't done it yet, it's still available, it's still open, and God willing, we're going to show support for the family and make sure that they are taken care of in their time of need. We begin today's service with a psalm from King David, Psalm chapter 16. We'll do it in the Hebrew first, followed by the English. Michtam leDavid Shamreini El ki chasisi vach Amart ladonai Adonai ata tevasi bal alecha likdoishim asher ba'aretz hema ve'adirei kol chefetzi bam yirbu atzvoisam acher maharu al asich niskehem midam uval esa es shemoisam al sefasai Adonai menos chelki v'choisi ata toimich gerali chavalim naflu libaniimim afnachlos shafra aloi Avarech Adonai asher yatzani afleilos yisruni chilyoisoi shivisi Adonai lenegdi samid ki mimini bal emoid lachein samach libi ve'agal kvoidi af besari yishkoin lovetach ki loisaz evnashi lishoy lositein chasidcha lirosh shachas toidieri oirchaim esay basmachis es panacha neimois b'mincha netzach. And now in the English. A michtam by David, watch over me, O God, for I have put my trust in you. You, my soul, have said to God, you are my master, you are not obligated to benefit me. For the sake of the holy ones who lie in the earth, and for the mighty, all my desires are fulfilled in their merit. The Lord is my allotted portion and my share. You guide my destiny. Portions have fallen to me in pleasant places. Indeed, a beautiful inheritance is mine. I bless the Lord who has advised me. Even in the nights, my intellect admonishes me. I have set the Lord before me at all times, because he is my right hand, I shall not falter. Therefore my heart rejoices, my soul exults, my flesh too rests secure. For you will not abandon my soul to the grave, you will not allow your pious one to see purgatory. Make known to me the path of life, that I may be satiated with the joy of your presence, with the bliss of your right hand forever. Of course, if it was up to me, I would invite every single one of the 1,000+ people who are here in this room to pay tribute to Jonathan and to share words of warmth, of comfort, inspiration for the Milwaukee community and beyond. However, as is often the case, as time constraints limit us somewhat, we will have just a few speakers who, of course, will be representative of the entire community. There's no doubt that the words that they share here today are words that resonate with every person in this room and beyond. Those of you who are here, those of you who are watching the live stream, those of you who might be listening to the recording later, I feel like every word said today will resonate with so many of us in this room. It is my distinct honor to introduce our first speaker today, dear friend of Jonathan. For those who knew Jonathan, of course, gaming was a huge passion of his. It's my distinct honor to introduce dear friend Brian Koal, one of his partners in GameCon, to open today's remarks.
Wow. Hello, everybody. My name is Brian Koal, and I have a fear of public speaking. I just wanted to start with that. Hopefully y'all go easy on me. Normally, there'd be no way I'd be up here doing this, and yet, this time, there's a confident voice in the back of my head telling me I had to do this. That'd be great, and I would say all the right things. And that voice sounded exactly like Jonathan Brostoff. So that's where I'll start with what made John so special to me and to many people. He had so many ideas. He would get these visions on what would make the world better, and he would get us all to do them. Last night, I went to a local cube event in John's honor. It was 48 people came out to play John's favorite game, Magic Cube. My last round opponent is a guy named Sean Marlowe, who I'd never really met him, though he did look really familiar. I asked him after the match for his favorite Jonathan story, and this is, I wasn't share it because I really liked it. He said he was part-time living in Milwaukee at the time, thinking about moving here, when he met John at a board game meetup that John just started up. After going for 2 weeks, John took him aside and asked him if he could run the event for him instead of him doing it. See, he decided that he was going to run for assembly and wasn't going to have time to run the event. So Sean stepped up and did it. He met plenty of people that way. And he lives in Milwaukee to this day, and found a great community thanks to John, and thanks for just being asked to do that and be a part of something. So that's the second thing I'd like to let you know about him. He had a great way of finding people, including them, putting them to work, handing it off to them. Some might think this is finding strangers and making them do your work. It is, but also it's giving people purpose. It's letting them know they belong, including them. It's building community. So let's all look around at this room. You'll probably see countless people here with the same kind of story who John got involved, got to do something, and made the world better with that. I'll be honest, I ran out of gas last night on getting all this together. I stayed up till 2 a.m. thinking about what to say, burned out, I couldn't figure it out, was very frustrated. I didn't get as far as that Sean story. But don't worry, John still had my back. True story, he woke me up at 6 a.m., his voice was in my head again, reminded me of an important job that I still had to do, especially if I could get Sean to do it for me. So there's the next one. John was the most tenacious guy I ever met. He was completely unstoppable when he had a goal. He could find a way. Let's all remember that hair right now when he grew it out. For a year and a half, he grew it out to remind us all that he would not be stopped. When John got it in his head to pass a bill in a Republican-controlled legislature for certifying sign language interpreters, he made it happen. When he got in his head to get the most cube trophies on Magic Online again and again, or to make Milwaukee a better city for pedestrians, bikes, and public transit, or make an entire Magic convention for a format that no tournament organizer would even make an 8-person side event for. I'll explain what all that means in a little bit. He could not be stopped. As his gamer friend up here today, I'm gonna talk about Magic and just explain that part of it, what Cube was to him, or is. It's not as important as a lot of the other things I've just mentioned, but I think if I lead you through this alien world, you'll see why it was so fascinating and exciting to John. Also, it's mostly why I'm here. While I was a friend of him for around 27 years now, we became much closer working at CubeCon together. Business partners owning the convention. Also, a lot of people here might not even know what Magic is, so here we go. So Magic, it's a card game. You're supposed to be a wizard, sort of, and you collect cards and build a deck out of them and try to be the first to do 20 points of damage to the other person, win the game. You kind of collect the cards to build the decks. There's about 28,000 cards that exist now. So countless possibilities all the time in the game. But we can narrow that down really easily. You don't even need to bring any cards with you if you want. One of the most popular ways to play is drafting, where a group of 8-ish people open packs and pass them around, choosing cards to build their decks with. It's widely considered the most skill-intensive format. But we can get more complicated than that too here. Instead of buying packs, a person can assemble a collection of 360 to 540 cards and build a thing called a cube, which will reflect their personal vision of how they want the game to be experienced. This takes countless hours of design and consideration. The enthusiasts who do this put so much work into it. But many of them create experiences that people playing Magic, which is already a diverse game, would never expect. And this was John's favorite way to play his favorite game. I think that really reflects how smart, innovative, and creative John was. John was the most accomplished player of Cube, actually, winning more Cube drafts online each season than anybody, time after time. He gained an enthusiastic following that watched him play, and he used that platform to promote his views and change minds, often politically, discussing how to make the world better and opening minds to change. A lot of people weren't prepared to hear that, but they, or didn't want to hear it, but he would engage with them and talk about all his great ideas with them. He didn't stop there. He also used his fame to drive a yearly charity stream that raised over $100,000 for various charities. This still wasn't enough for Q and Jonathan, though. With no physical, these Q events were really hard to do in the real world, and most tournament organizers didn't even want to touch them because they didn't think they were feasible. But John took it on himself to start Magic's first Cube convention. Most people said we were crazy and it couldn't be done, but we did it anyway, and CubeCon was born. First with 150 players, then 400 the next year, and now 600 just last month. They've also inspired countless other events, often also for charity. Because the community coming to these events ends up being the most positive, inclusive, and enthusiastic in Magic. Cube is all about the experience, and John was a big part of how that experience formed and how it ended up feeling. That's about what we got. And yeah, I love you, John. I'm glad I was here to say all this, and rest in peace and power. I appreciate you.
Thanks so much, Brian. Wow. It shows you how little I know about gaming. You lost me about 3 words into that description. For our next speaker, I'd like to call up one of Jonathan's friends from youth, somebody who spent a lot of time with Jonathan as a friend. I know as recently as last week, as recently as early this week, before Jonathan's passing, still in touch with Jonathan, still chatting with Jonathan, still talking with Jonathan, and of course still trying to show support, even though he didn't live here locally. The first one to really come in from out of town and show support for the family. I'd like to please introduce Victor Sikman.
It feels like Jonathan knew the whole world. He was a consummate networker. He connected people. Recently I had conversations with friends who have good friends, people who married people because they met them through Jonathan. That's who he was. He brought people together. We met just on the block at the Hillel here on campus 22 years ago. Time passes. And I didn't like him so much. He wore everything on his sleeve. Bust people's chops, as he said. Apparently that expression wasn't limited to just me. He cared about people deeply, and he would get in their face and get in their lives and try to get to know them, try to get to know the real them. We had our ups and downs. Like any friendship. We worked on campus. He brought me in to work on a pro-Israel student group that he founded or took over in 2003. And that led to a Jewish student group, a lot of nights together, a lot of conversations, and a lifelong friendship. I felt bothered because he would, as he became more politically active, he would ask me my opinion on different things. He would send me, he got used to other people doing his work. So he would send me things to proofread, to write. I feel like I know a lot of people here without really knowing anyone, just from seeing them in the things we worked on and the conversations we had. He had a bad day, but he won every battle till then. I was so proud of him. Just a tiny little Jewish kid. I'm so proud of him and what he achieved. Just through sheer determination. I don't think he was a good speaker. I remember seeing him. Was that common knowledge? I remember seeing him at the Capitol, and my heart was fluttering because I was afraid he was going to stumble. But he grew so much. He grew so much. He became articulate, he became strong. His conviction was supported by experience and knowledge. He loved Milwaukee. My goodness, he loved Milwaukee. He knew every part of the city. He took jobs when he was little just to learn all the little nooks and crannies of the city, driving around delivering pizzas. He didn't need the money, he just wanted to know more about the city, to spend time with people. Well, who does that? One time he told me he was carjacked. A guy came in with, I don't remember if it was a knife or what, and he just started talking to the guy. And drove him home. And just let him out and have a good day. He could talk to anyone. He had a real gift. I might have known Jonathan a little bit differently from others because last year has been very difficult for the Jewish community. We're not the only community that's suffering, but our community is suffering. We're in pain. A lot of people are traumatized, not just by what happened over there, but by what's happening here. My wife and I live in Chicago, in the suburbs of Chicago, where a couple of weeks ago, a person was shot on their way to synagogue. And he's thankful that he was shot then, because typically he brings his daughters with him. And the guy came back when the police were there and shot at the police. Every Jewish person with WhatsApp is on a group. We see everything that's happening in Brooklyn, in LA, in Detroit. We feel connected to it. As American Jews, forget what's happening there, as American Jews. My wife and I have talked about coming back to Milwaukee. We have a son. I At first I was embarrassed that he was making noise, but then I realized, I remember Jonathan bringing his children along to everywhere. Maybe you remember that. We felt safe coming to Milwaukee because Jonathan was here. Jonathan was an immense, strong, powerful advocate for the Jewish community. And I'm saying that just for myself. I know that he was a powerful advocate for many communities. He took on so many causes. Believe me, I tried. Like, chill out. Every week, every month, whoever he felt was being attacked, disenfranchised, harassed, he was the first one there. He was on the phone with people. He wanted to send out press releases. He wanted to give, like we say, he wanted to give people chizuk. He wanted to give them strength to know that they were not alone. He did this the whole time I knew him. And the Rabbi may be regretting calling me up now, because what I have to say is a little harsh. In the last year, the Jewish community has not received the support that it needed. And Jonathan, as a friend to so many of you, did not receive the support that he needed. I want you to hear me. No. I can count on the fingers of one hand the number of people who checked up on him, who saw what was happening, and who knew who he was, and didn't feel like it was up to them. It wasn't their place. It was Jonathan's place to be there for everybody. So we felt safe coming back to Milwaukee because we knew that Jonathan was here. Whenever we would talk, the first thing he would ask me, usually I'd be getting off work and my mind would be on 1,000 other things. First thing he would ask is, what's this week's Parsha? What's this week's Torah reading? The Torah, the Bible, is divided up into weekly readings, and we sort of live with the weekly reading. We read it in synagogue, but we also, throughout that whole week, we examine it, we parse it, we learn it, we take it apart. And every year it's new, every year it's different because we're new, we're different, we're coming to it with fresh experience, with fresh perspective. I didn't get to tell him a little bit about this week's Parsha. The name of this week's Parsha is Lech Lecha. It's the third Parsha in the Torah, and it speaks about Abraham. It's the first time that Hashem, that God, speaks to Abraham. And he tells him, Hashem said to Abraham, go for yourself from your land, from your birthplace, and from your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I'll make you a great nation, I'll bless you, and I'll make your name great. And you will be a blessing. The name of the Parsha is Lech Lecha, which I'll be Chassidus. In the style of Chassidus, it means the name of the Parsha is the essence of the Parsha. So just by knowing the name, we already can get the essence, the soul of that portion. Lech Lecha. And so all these commentators throughout 2,000 years pile on. Each one has something new to say, and each one has to say something new because otherwise they're not bringing anything. So they have a lot to say. Lech Lecha means go for yourself. God is telling Abraham, right at the time he's sort of in the area of Syria, and he's telling him to go to the land of Israel. And he's telling him, Lech Lecha, go for yourself, in a simple way, in a simple translation. And he promises him that it's going to be good. Why should he promise him? God said, go. Because when a person is traveling, they become diminished, the Torah says. They have a reduction in wealth. Fewer people know them when they're traveling. They're not able to spend time with family as much, and so they become reduced. But God was telling Abraham, don't worry about that. It'll be the opposite. It'll be good. And the very first word of the parsha, lech, go, because this is what we're enjoined to do. A person who serves God, a person who, it's a loaded term, right? A person who has faith, who tries to be of service. They can't stand in one place. They have to go. They have to move. Life is movement. And the opposite of life is the opposite of movement. So the very first step is to go. Go where? Lecha, for yourself. There's a different interpretation of lecha, which some commentators bring, which means not for yourself, but to yourself. Meaning go to your essence. And for Abraham, how that essence is expressed is it has to be expressed in Israel, that all the parts of his personality only can come together in this one place. This is where he can really become expressed properly. So, more mystical works say there's two lechas. There's the lecha of a person's essence, and there's a lecha of a person's mission. And Chassidus explains, the Lubavitcher Rebbe explains, that how does a person reach their essence? I'm asking, who knows? So he says, through their mission, as they go and do the things that they need to do, as they go into the world, into the lowest parts of the world, and try to elevate it, as a result, they reach their essence. So through the process of going down, they rise very high. Jonathan's work was that. He tried to reach everybody, and he tried to do good in the world. And I think he succeeded quite a bit. But the work is not done, and we have to step in, and we have to do our part. I said before that my wife and I felt comfortable coming back to Milwaukee because he was here, because we felt that we could depend on him, that we could rely on him to make sure that our children didn't have to grow up in schools guarded by people with bulletproof vests. But there's also an opportunity here. There's an opportunity for others to step in his shoes and to make sure that is the case, that Milwaukee can continue to be a safe place for the Jewish community, something that was very dear to him. And then the very next line in this week's Parsha, after God promises Abraham that he will bless Abraham, he says, I will bless those who bless you, and also the opposite. And I think there's an opportunity for someone who wants to make a difference to fill Jonathan's shoes and to show the Jewish community that we're safe here, that we're respected here, that we are not going to be marginalized and pushed out of public spaces, that we are supported in the same way that we support others. I'm going to miss my friend. I keep checking my phone. Every time there's a text message, it's just a prolific, 2:30? I've got kids, I don't have time for this. But that was his mission. He was restless. felt he had so much to get done. And now it's on to us to try to finish that work. Rest in peace, Rabbi. Thank you.
No discussion of Jonathan's life is complete without discussing his political ambitions and his political career. For our next speaker, his relationship with Jonathan crosses both personal and career. It's my distinct honor to introduce our county executive, dear friend of Jonathan, Mr. Crowley.
Good morning. I wish Jonathan could see this room right now. Honoring the life and legacy of Jonathan Brostoff in just a few minutes feels almost impossible. He was a friend, he was a husband, a father, a leader, and to me, he was my brother from another mother. I want to thank Jonathan's family for this opportunity, for letting me share my small piece of his story with all of you. I want to tell you that I love you, and I know that we are all here united in our love for him and our commitment to being here for you. As we gather to mourn Jonathan's passing, it's important that we don't just reflect on what we lost, but also celebrate everything that he gave us. Jonathan lived with an unwavering purpose, deep compassion, and a relentless dedication to leaving the world a better place than he found it. And he did that in ways big and small, from his career in politics to his endless support for many of his family and his friends. And of course, as anyone knew would tell you, he was a scrappy basketball player too. Jonathan didn't just walk through life, he made an impact with every step. He believed deeply in justice and equity and in the fundamental goodness within each person. He dedicated his life to making sure that every voice was heard, that every need was seen, and every person felt valued. Jonathan lived by those values in everything that he did. As we already heard, I still remember him growing his hair out to pass a bill that was going to benefit the hard and hearing community. And by the time he cut it, he actually looked like a Gandalf from the Lord of the Rings. But he didn't care about how he looked. He just cared about the people that he was fighting for. Jonathan was the voice of the people. He stood up for everyone who felt unseen, unheard, and forgotten. He didn't see his role as a job. He seen it as a calling to make our community much stronger, safer, and much just every single day. And he did it with humility and grace, always lifting up those around him, always giving credit to others, never needing the spotlight for himself. And many of you knew his nickname, the Honey Badger. And if you knew him well, you would understand why. He was fiercely loyal, fearless, and he had a tenacity that was unmatched. If you needed him, Jonathan was always there. Between 2012 and 2020, I moved around a lot. And Jonathan showed up to help me move every single time. But he would also laugh to remind me about the time that my brother actually locked me in the U-Haul truck. And in case I've forgotten, Jonathan would pull out his phone and show me the video, because you know Jonathan had to record it. But if you know Jonathan, he was always ready to laugh and always ready to share a memory with you. His personality was infectious. Jonathan had this spark that just drew people in. And it was hard to put in words, but he had a way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room, the only person that mattered in the moment. And when he listened, he didn't just hear you, he really took it in. Jonathan wasn't just there to solve problems, he was there to understand. He wanted to make connection, and he wanted to bring people together. And he wasn't just about politics. He was about people. He was about relationships. He was about community. One of my favorite stories with Jonathan goes back to when I first met my wife, Erica. And we was only dating at the time. And I took her to one of his fundraisers. Sounds a little bit corny, but this was our first political fundraiser. And the reason why I say it's corny, because he knew that she was the one, because who does a date at a political fundraiser? But Jonathan being Jonathan, after he got done with his speech, very diverse crowd in age and race and religion and all that. At the end of his speech, he got everybody chanting, "Nuck if you buck." And my wife looked at me crazy. She said, "Are all white people in politics like this?" And all I could do was laugh, and I looked at her and I said, "Jonathan's not white, he's Jewish." But that's the kind of energy that Jonathan brought to everything that he did. He was unexpected, he was joyful, he had a boundless spirit that made even the most serious moments a little lighter. Our friendship, like so many of his relationships, was rooted in a deep care and compassion. And I'm lucky enough to know Jonathan just beyond his public role. He was one of my best friends. He was my confidant. He was my brother. And yes, he taught me how to play Magic. He actually gifted me my first deck. We would spend hours debating strategy. We would laugh at each other's mistakes. We were sharing the joy of those small moments of connection. Those times were priceless, and I know so many of you have your own stories as well, your own precious memories of him. Jonathan's influence on me went far beyond laughter and friendship. He taught me so much about what it means to show up, to do the work even when it's hard, to be there for others. He showed me that courage isn't just about being fearless, it's about standing up for what's right even when it's hard, even when you're scared. And he led by example, facing every challenge with determination and resilience. Jonathan and I used to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to drive to Madison and play basketball at 6 a.m. in the morning at the YMCA. And when I did it as a staffer, and then when I first got elected, after we would get done playing basketball, he introduced me to a meeting I never thought that me and him would be walking into, which was the weekly Bible study week in the legislature. Which, if you think about me and him, Democrats, Jewish guy, I thought this was the start of a good joke, but it wasn't. He may not have known it, but he was teaching me about building bridges, about finding common ground, particularly in unexpected places. Jonathan taught me to see the world not just as it is, but what it could be. And he inspired me to work towards that vision just as he did. Jonathan loved this community with everything that he had, and he made sure that that love was felt by every person he encountered. And looking out at all of you, standing room only, he made sure that that love was encountered. I know you all are showing him love today, and it's important. This is what Jonathan did. He brought people together from every walk of life, from every corner of our community. He wanted to always remind us that we was all connected and that we all belonged. He never let differences divide us. Instead, he showed us to build bridges, to understand one another, and to work together toward a brighter future. Jonathan's passing is a call to honor one of his core beliefs. Because he believed in keeping it real, keeping it open and keeping it honest. And we may not know the full burden others are carrying. And his passing reminds us to take care of ourselves. It's a reminder that we all need to check in with ourselves and check in with one another, to rest, to seek help without shame, to know that caring for your own well-being isn't necessarily selfish, it's essential. Jonathan taught us to strengthen vulnerability, and in his honor, let's commit to caring for ourselves and each other. To honor Jonathan's legacy is to honor that strength, that honesty, and that deep care for one another. Let us be real with each other. Let us open our hearts. Let us ask for help when we need it and offer it without hesitation. Let us live with the same compassion and dedication that Jonathan brought to every day of his life. Jonathan, my friend, I will miss you more than words will ever say. I'll miss those early morning calls that seemed to wake my wife up. I'll miss your sense of humor and all the memes and the laughter that we shared. But I'll also miss the wisdom that you seemed to offer me just when I needed it most. I promise to carry it forward, everything that you taught me, to keep striving, to keep working, and to keep believing in the power of love, compassion, and community just as you did. And I promise to support and love your family with the same love that you showed all of us. Thank you, Jonathan, for the light that you brought into our lives, for the love and the laughter, for showing us what it means to live with purpose and with heart. Your journey here may have ended, but your legacy will live on in every single one of us, especially if we were lucky enough to really know you. Rest in peace, my good brother. I love you, and thank you for everything.
And of course, Jonathan, thanks for opening up that U-Haul truck and letting Mr. Crowley out eventually. We appreciate it. No life, no career, no ambition goes anywhere without a real mentor, someone that we can look up to, someone that we can get advice from, someone who's been there, done that, a little bit more advanced in age than us, a little bit more wise than us, who we can turn to in times of need and gain direction in life choices that we make. It's my distinct honor to introduce our fourth speaker today. One of Jonathan's closest and oldest mentors, Mr. Joe Stanley.
Wow, this is beautiful. So my name's Joseph Stanley, and I'm a therapist that works at Pathfinders. And so I'm not, like I knew with our last speaker, and I knew I was going to get somebody that speaks like that, because my role in the community is to listen, but not to like public speaking. So, but when Diana called me the other night to ask me to do this, I said, just as long as I can come as a redneck. So it's kind of ironic that Jonathan, when I met him when he was 14, chose to pick me as a mentor, but he's one of many over the years that have done that, and quite a few from the Jewish community. And you know, all of them have taught me so much, you know, so I'm gonna try to like talk from the script a little bit, but Jonathan was like 14 years old when he showed up in my life, and I've like over the years have never forgotten those few moments that he's with me. And like I said, you know, I was raised by rednecks up in the mountains in New York, and so I'm gonna try not to swear. But I was swearing in my head, even though I didn't to him when I first met him, and I knew I was in for trouble. You know, he just was like a sponge, you know? He was like, and he wasn't gonna give me any choice. Like, I'd never gone to somebody and said, I'm gonna mentor you, you know? They always come to me and they say, like, you're gonna be my mentor, you know? And so, but he was like a sponge, you know? And he just would like follow me around and like learn, you know? And that was one of his strengths, is like he learned from everybody. He could even learn from me, you know? Like, even though I was like so much out of like his realm of being, you know? So, but Jonathan came to Pathfinders not to receive services, but to be of service, you know? And that's one message, you know, like that I've been, you know, especially like the last 6 months, you know, with all that's going on in the world, and to promote mental wellness, is like, Jonathan came to help other people and ask for help, you know, and that is like so vital. And I really want to encourage everyone to do that. So anyways, he showed up there, and even though I was cursing that this kid was following me around and trying to get rid of him, you know, that it was my role to support this part of his journey. And then he just like had this, you know, magical quality of like empathy and ability to interact with those that are so much different than him. And it was just like, you know, joyous, you know, to watch him interact with the youth that showed up, you know. And a magical thing that happens at Pathfinders with our, you know, with the youth that get involved in there, and Jonathan was like a foundation in building that part of that program, is like, there's nothing like, you know, if you show up in crisis, to have someone like Jonathan that's your age that can help you to feel okay, you know. It was just like so amazing. And then, you know, like, my way of mentoring is like not waiting for you to ask me like what you want to do. It's like I always tell people what to do, you know, that I mentor. And I don't do that in the rest of my life, but like, it's just like, that's what he wanted, you know. He wanted someone to push him, you know, and he was involved in like so many things as a volunteer. So he would come to Pathfinders, I don't remember how many hours per week, but it seemed like he was there every time I was there, except when he was supposed to be at school. And I think he went to half day of school for most of that. But he, you know, like his involvement with the ACLU, with like Urban Underground, like all those things, and those, you know, Jonathan, along with like, you know, many other people I see in here, also came out of those groups, you know, and they are the ones that, you know, I can say it's definitely like made it a pleasure to live in Milwaukee. You know, and part of that, like a pivotal like moment, you know, going off of the theme of like, you know, I don't really care what he wanted to do. Like I would tell him what to do. Was we were on the 3rd floor, and Pathfinders has a shelter over on the east side by Pieces Shuttle. It's a beautiful Victorian house. And we're up on the 3rd floor, which is the ugliest part of the house. But, and he was up there and he was trying to figure out, what am I gonna do? And so I handed him an application and I said, here, you're gonna go do this. And it was the application for Public Allies. And over the years, you know, those of you from Public Allies, he would share with me like how important that was for him and his journey going down the road. So don't be afraid to tell, you know, somebody that you're mentoring or some young person in your life, except maybe your own children, because if you tell them to do it, they're not going to. But don't be afraid to tell them what to do. So I'm not really reading most of this. I'm going off script just to be sure. But I don't know. I guess I want to talk a little bit, like, you know, the last time I was with Jonathan was a long time ago. I didn't spend much time with him after he was like 20, you know. And that's my fault because, like, you know, I have a passion for young people that have experienced extreme trauma, and so I'm always working too much. But the last time I was with him was at, you know, which is more fitting for me, and I think Jonathan was maybe there for me, or maybe it was a comfortable place for him, but it was at the funeral of you know, one of our dear friends, Valencia, and we sat in the back, you know, of the service, you know. So we would have been not back where those people were back there, but even like way back, you know, several rooms over, you know. And he talked about, you know, we talked a little, you know, some about Valencia and the values she brought to our life and stuff, but he talked about, you know, he talked about Diana and his children, you know, and going off to spend time with them. So, you know, he just was full of so much love, and it's just like, it's a great loss for the community that he's not here. But I would like to wrap up, like, you know, with one like significant thing that I've been able to experience in the last year that it's a direct result of like Jonathan and Narissa that's here, and Valencia and Liat, among other of like the early youth that were involved in like shaping what Pathfinders is, because they taught us that like if you want to provide services to youth, you have to have the youth design it, right? So like a recent accomplishment that sprung, like lots of good things have come over the years out of that, but like a couple of years ago, we decided to expand like the role that youth with lived experiences like play at Pathfinders. And definitely, like Jonathan, over the years when I've met with him, we talked about how to get like youth more involved. And in those early years, we had like lots of conversations about things that have come to fruition there. But like it's already been awarded and starting youth, a group of youth. There's about like 30 youth leaders now. When Jonathan was there was about 6. You know, and they actually like design the programs that happen at Pathfinders. If we're going to hire a staff, they have to be interviewed by the youth and chosen by the youth to work there. But this group of youth wrote for a federal housing grant, because one problem we have in Milwaukee is there's so many homeless youth. I interact with 20, 30, sometimes 100 homeless youth. Like part of my job is I go out late at night and verify youth that are sleeping outside. I work with youth that are, you know, exchanging sex to have a place to stay. And so these youth wrote for a grant, and it's a $3 million grant over 2 years that will like continue if it's successful, which it will be because they're running it. And it will result in about 90 scattered site housing apartments for youth to live in. And I think of him and like the other youth, like Jonathan, when I see that stuff happening, and he taught me like how, and very strongly how to do that. And then I just want to share this for myself, you know, because one time, whenever I would see Jonathan, whenever I would talk to somebody about Jonathan or just think about Jonathan, I thought about a period, it was about a year into, my time with him. And I was pushing him probably a little bit too hard, and giving him a hard time, which I often would do. And he would not speak or recognize me for the next 6 months. I apologized to him. I took complete responsible. It's not okay that I, pushed you that hard, and he wouldn't even recognize I was saying a word for 6 months. And then one day he just started talking to me again. So, but thank you.
For those of you who, like myself, live here in Jonathan's district, we live just 2 blocks away, 3 blocks away. Nothing gave Jonathan more pride than walking down the street with his beautiful wife, pushing his big blue double, triple, quadruple wagon there with his beautiful children in there, and of course manning up and pushing it and schlepping it. And of course, it was always a joy to see Jonathan on the street, and I see some of my neighbors here who, of course, must have seen that as well. It is my distinct honor to introduce our next speaker, of course representing Jonathan's family, his dear wife, Diana.
Thank you all so much. I can't believe all the people in this room. It's incredible. I have a speech here, but I'm going to go off a little bit. So for those of you who don't know, this Zelazo Center used to be a synagogue. Jonathan was a member here. He also had his bar mitzvah here, so he became a man here. And then we also had our wedding party here too. And now we're here to celebrate the end of his life. So this is a very meaningful place for the Brostoff family. He loved UWM. This is where we met 17 years ago. And I just wanted to share with you guys a little bit the story about how we met. He was the president of the UWM Democrats Club. Surprise. And he used to make his chair team table every day so that they could recruit as many members as possible. So one day I was leaving the union and I passed their table. I don't come from a political family. I don't know anything about that. I still don't. But I was leaving the union, and I locked eyes with the man at the table, the UWM Dem table. And I was like, I gotta say hi to this person now. So I didn't want to be rude, so I stopped and I talked to this person. I don't know what we talked about, but like a couple of minutes went by, and I was like, oh, God damn it. Now I have to sign up for the newsletter. So I put my phone number down and blah, blah, blah. And later that week, on a Sunday night, I was watching volleyball at the intramural sports over in Engelman Hall, and I got this number, 414-229, whatever. 229 is UWM. And it was like 6:30 at night, and it was Jonathan. He called me, hello, this is Jonathan Brostoff. I'm calling from UWM Dems. I want to invite you to our meeting, potluck thing, or whatever. And I was like, oh, I think I met you at a table. And he's like, oh, yeah, probably. I table all the time. I'm like, okay, yeah. You're kind of short, right? And I was like, yeah, I'm kind of short. Like, you have brown hair. Yes. It's curly, yeah. I'm like, yeah, you have blue eyes? And he's like, no, my eyes are brown. I was like, okay, that's somebody else. I think it was Joe Hastrader. So I don't remember what else we talked about, but he later that night looked me up on Facebook, and all he said was, "Is this you?" And then I just kept seeing him around campus, and this guy would not leave me alone. Oh my God, he would not leave me alone. So that's how we got together. So back to my speech here. I have been experiencing a wave of emotion since this unbelievably horrific event happened on Monday. Jonathan struggled with his mental health, and we may never truly know the depth of what he was feeling. I hope we can find solace in remembering the love, kindness, and unwavering dedication he had to making the world a better place. Jonathan was one of the best humans I have ever had the privilege of knowing. His love for social justice, his commitment to the community, and his spirit of service were part of his very essence. He was a man who not only believed in the power of kindness, but lived it every day. His faith in mitzvahs was deep and sincere, and he found true purpose in acts of kindness, seeing them as a way to bring light to those around him. In the course of our lives together, I feel so grateful to have shared both the highs and the lows with him. Jonathan gave me 4 beautiful children, and now as we continue on, I ask all of you to help us preserve his memory. Please help us share with them who their father was, a man of immense compassion and love, so that they can carry his legacy forward. I'm going off script again, just briefly. This has been a really hard last 18 months for us. We've been completely isolated. It's been horrible. Jonathan felt so alone at the end of his life. I see all these people in this room and I'm devastated. It's just unbelievable. We're living in a time right now where people are feeling very sensitive about everything, and they should. But I really pray, and I ask all of you to please consider how you speak to each other, how you show up in a room with other people. We have our personal beliefs, but we're all still human. We all have our own experiences. Can we just please be nice to each other? Be kind, have grace, please. You don't know how your words impact people. Today I pray for kindness, healing, and courage to move forward. May we all find peace, inspiration, and self-love, just as Jonathan would have wanted. He often reminded us that life is a beautiful struggle, and in his memory, may we continue to find beauty, even in the struggles. Thank you for honoring him with me today, and lastly, knock if you buck.
There are times in which a tragedy is so great, the wound so deep, that there are no words that can give adequate expression to that pain. Today we mourn the tragic, untimely passing of Jonathan. This is one of those times. When a life filled with such promise, potential, ambition is ended in its prime so abruptly, mother and father have endured so much. When a wife, brother, relatives, friends are left reeling in profound sadness. 4 beautiful mini Jonathans wondering who will care for them. What can we possibly say? Indeed, we grope for explanations or answers. None seem adequate. Perhaps our silence can convey far more than any words possibly can. Still, as Jews, we look towards our Torah, to the words of our prophets, psalmists, sages, who throughout the millennia guided and comforted our people through the darkest of times, lending perspective to even the most unfathomable of pain. As a matter of fact, this very day on the Hebrew calendar, for those of you who don't know, Jews, yes, we like to make things complicated, we keep 2 calendars. So on the Hebrew calendar today, we're in the 2nd month of Cheshvan, the 7th day of the month, so Zayin Cheshvan today. And this very day on the Jewish calendar marks the day during temple times when Jews living in the diaspora would make it back home from their pilgrimage to Jerusalem. While most Jews lived in Israel proper, a minority of the community lived further east, across the Euphrates River in what is present-day Iraq. The Talmud teaches that today was the day they came back home to their diaspora after visiting Jerusalem for their holiday pilgrimage. This diaspora, or as our liturgy often calls it, galut, or more commonly translated as exile, describes in a nutshell years of dispersion of our people to the far-flung corners of earth. This dispersion is the forerunner of expulsions, inquisitions, pogroms, holocausts, and calamities that follow us to this very day. This exile state, or in the original Hebrew, galut, this exile state represents dissonance and disconnect. The psalmist tells us, when the Lord returns the returnees to Zion, we shall be like dreamers. Our liturgy refers to this period and state of exile as a dream state, like you're in a bad dream. And one of the elements of a dream that stands out most is the convergence of conflicting ideas, the absurd coexistence of opposites. In a dream, yes, an elephant can fit in the eye of a needle. A skinny cow, as the Bible describes, can swallow a fat cow. An earthbound human can suddenly sprout wings and become airborne. People long lost can be present in the modern day. For the Jewish soul, for the wandering Jewish soul, exile is that dreamscape where opposites and paradoxical phenomena coexist. It's absurd, it's incongruous, makes no sense. And yet it is a reality in which we must live and flourish, not just live, so that we might one day be awakened from the bad dream and attain an even higher level of existence and awareness, of reconnection and reunification. And sometimes this state of exile, this state of galus, the state of diaspora, the state of confusion, the state of paradox exists not only communally, but individually and privately as well. A person can be in an internal state of dissonance and disconnect. A soul can be in a state of exile, wherein paradoxical and opposite characteristics coexist within a single human being. We cannot make sense of it. But at the same time, we cannot allow one aspect of that person to negate all others about that person. As difficult, challenging as it may be, we must try to find a way to process that paradox and hopefully one day find internal peace. In the words of wise King Solomon, in Hebrew, V'hachai yitain el libo, in English that translates, let the living take to heart. Meaning to say, even as hearts are heavy with grief and sadness, we must aim to direct our attention to the living lessons and qualities that Jonathan imparted to us as his enduring legacy. When I think of Jonathan, my mind wanders directly to biblical figure Jonathan, son of King Saul. The parallels are self-evident. Mr. Crowley, maybe from the Bible studies, will help me out here. Let's start with the obvious. The name Jonathan, or Yonatan in Hebrew, as is Jonathan's Hebrew name, means God has gifted. Jonathan was an unexpected gift to his parents, born in 1983, 9 years after his dear older brother. Biblical Jonathan was an unapologetic, independent thinker, going so far as to defy his own father, King Saul, numerous times. Let's see how that goes. Our Jonathan is the most independent teenager I'll ever know. Raise your hand if you're a parent in this room who had a teenager volunteering at a homeless shelter. I don't see a single hand yet. Oh, I see one. Congratulations. Who does that? Which teenager volunteers at a homeless shelter? Most shelters might assume the teen is just another runaway himself. Not Jonathan. His volunteer work at Pathfinders and so many other places continued throughout his teens, 20s, 30s, and even the beginning of his 40s. Most notably, biblical Jonathan befriends King David, or future King David, who incidentally is also his brother-in-law. Despite David and Jonathan both competing for the same crown, for the same throne. And Jonathan shows unyielding loyalty to David when David's life is on the line, under threat by none other than Jonathan's own father. Of course, our Jonathan's ability to connect with people who had very different opinions than he did, and to bring all those different people together was legendary. Just take a look around this room. You see people of every color, stripe, religion, orientation, gender, and every other political affiliation. Hat you wear. I mean, just take a look around this room. If this room doesn't represent Jonathan, I don't know what does. Biblical Jonathan, lastly, is informed by the prophet that he will die in battle, protecting the Israelites against the Philistine invaders. And Jonathan, biblical Jonathan, does not shy away from battle. Heroically, he goes right ahead, full head of steam, and leads his battalion forward. Our Jonathan was a fierce warrior, and he fought every single day. Now, his vision for this world veered sharply from what his eyes told him. And here's where his own personal exile comes into play. He viewed this world as decidedly good and just and generous, almost utopian. Yet he did battle every single day with an unjust and harsh world, and took up causes when nobody else would. Who could forget Jonathan's long hair, waiting for the state legislature to get its act together for the deaf and hard of hearing community? Jonathan never took no for an answer. His biggest weapon was his power of advocacy, and his greatest battles were for the underprivileged, those unable to advocate for themselves. For myself personally, Jonathan was somebody I can always turn to for assistance. My last communication with Jonathan, just days before his death, just last week, I had asked him to, I shared with his family, I asked him to handle a couple of parking tickets that members of our community had received. We were parked right outside our synagogue down the block at Chabad, and of course the vice president was visiting, and the signs went up, and moments later, like 3 or 4 cars were towed. And of course I sent an email to Jonathan asking him if he could please look into it, handle the tickets, talk to the right people. Of course, this is his job as the older person. If I can't turn to him, who can I turn to? And of course, Jonathan, just 4.5 hours later, I checked the timestamps yesterday. I emailed him at 2:29. The email came back at 6:49. So just 4.5 hours later or so, the reply came through. The tickets were voided. And then I paid attention to his signature, signed, in service, Jonathan Brostoff. Is there a better way to remember Jonathan than in service, Jonathan Brostoff? For all his firepower, friendship, openness to new ideas, adventurousness, Jonathan had his fair share of challenges, inner turmoil and conflicts that sometimes overwhelmed him. And he was open about his inner turmoil and struggled with it, and spoke publicly and wrote publicly about it. He achieved his fair share of victories, but sometimes fell short as victim of his own unrealistic standard that he held himself and the world around him to. You might say Jonathan was a soul in exile. His internal goodness, his desire for a just and a perfect world, his spiritual journey was occasionally so lofty, it almost failed to connect and manifest into reality. For these most sensitive of souls who are in tune with that part of themselves, living with that can be overwhelming. Living as a soul in exile comes with a level of pain that most of us, we don't know, and hopefully never do. But of course, it's only the special ones that are in tune with that part of themselves, and of course, this was Jonathan. Jonathan took tremendous pride in his Judaism. When I visited him, whether this is in Chambers in Madison, when the assembly out there would be in session, or at City Hall, as we tried scheduling a weekly prayer session, he'd always insist on praying in a public space, never in his office, never hiding. He wanted every single person in the assembly to watch him don those weird black boxes that us Jews do. We put these boxes in our arm and our head every day, and Jonathan says, I want to do this right here in the public space. I want to do this on the streets. I visited him at home a couple of weeks ago, and he's like, hey, Rabbi, let's do a prayer. And of course, I take these boxes. He's like, no, not in the living room, on the streets. He insisted on the sidewalk right there outside his home. Of course, Jonathan was an authentic person, and authentic people don't believe in hiding. Authentic people believe that who I am is who I am everywhere, in every single space. And Jonathan wore that Jewish pride on his sleeve publicly in the most public of ways. I've got nothing to be ashamed of, he'd always tell me. In a post-October 7 world, where his public support for Israel's right to defend itself cost him some long-time friends. Jonathan doesn't back down. That's not Jonathan. As one of the few Jewish elected officials in our city, county, and state, he demanded accountability for anti-Semitism right here on campus, which was his stomping grounds, and elsewhere. He'd never take no for an answer. He fights for what's right, often at his own cost, as Diana mentioned, politically as well as personally. Jonathan fought the good fight. And just like biblical Jonathan, our Jonathan heroically died in battle. Battle for a better, more just and fair world, and constant battle for inner peace, for more authentic, true spiritual peace. We yearn for a world of renewal and redemption. Indeed, within the embers of pain, destruction, of exile, can be found glimmers of redemption and renewal. The living must take to heart. What can we take? What can we walk away with for our own lives here today? I'd like to share but one idea, food for thought on what we might take away from Jonathan's way too short life. When we live through tragedy and come out the other side, survivors, if you will, we wonder, what are we destined for? What are we to take away and learn? How are we to live with this? They tell a story of a fireman who saves a man from a burning apartment somewhere in New York City, which is probably a daily occurrence. The man thanks the firefighter and asks, what can I do to repay you? I'm a man of means. Tell me what you need. I'm happy to give you a hand. Let me help you. Let me gift you. Let me reward you with something. The firefighter poo-poos and says, nah, it's my job. Come on. And the man insists, I'd love to do something for you. Finally, the firefighter responds, if you really want to pay me back, you can do so by leading a life that is worth living. For Jonathan's loved ones and friends, of course family, we can learn to make sure that every day that we are here in this world, to make our life one that is worth living, a life of service, a life of acceptance of others, a proud and authentic life. Today we have a decision to make, all 1,000 of us in this room plus, and all those watching us on the live stream, those of us in the hallways outside. So we all have a decision to make, and the decision doesn't just affect us. The decision that we make right now is a decision that really affects Jonathan. By the way, just a side note, I'm sure Jonathan is up there. He's not listening to a word we're saying here. He's up there teaching Kobe some basketball moves. So whatever we say here today is for us, it's not for him. So we all have a decision to make right here, right now. A this sacred time before Jonathan's casket is buried, is this the end for Jonathan's journey in this world? Or does Jonathan continue to live on? We get to write another chapter in Jonathan's life. He can live again now, tomorrow, the next day, through us and in us. Through our framing and reframing of these moments and of this very moment right now. Think about Jonathan's passion, enthusiasm. Think about his loyalty, his spirituality, his Jewish pride, his interest in understanding and relating to people, even those in circumstances far different from his own. Imagine if we resolved to live more in tune with our yearning soul as a tribute to Jonathan and his most positive enthusiasms in his life. Imagine if we walk away with a renewed application for the important relationships in our lives. If we rededicate ourselves to connecting with those we love the deepest, most open, and expressive way possible. There's nothing more essential to tranquil and peaceful existence of a human being than our connection with those nearest and dearest to us. Yes, those sitting right next to us in the seat right next to us, as well as those we're going to go home to tonight, as well as the friends we're going to chat with today on Facebook and WhatsApp and our text messages and our phone calls and all the other ways we communicate. Imagine we hug each other a little more tightly. Imagine we cherish each other a little more deeply. Imagine we express our innermost feelings to one another a little more openly. If Jonathan's strengths and weaknesses will inspire us to do so, his life won't end today. Nor will this tragedy be forever a tragedy. Jonathan's life is in our hands to exchange it for an inspiration. We pray that Jonathan's neshama, Jonathan's soul, Yonasan ben Avraham Ufreda, Jonathan, son of Alan and Phyllis, his blessed soul now rests in peace, sheltered by the wings of the divine presence. May his soul be bound in the bond of eternal life. May God continue to grant strength and grace upon Diana, Boaz, Baraq, Binyamin, Yael. Are they here? No, somewhere. They're probably spraying the fire extinguisher somewhere. Alan, Phyllis, Jacob, Dam, and each of us whom he touched throughout his life. I want to cheat just a little bit and go off script here for a moment. Those who know me know that I'm usually not a notes kind of guy, but for Jonathan it was important to formulate what I wanted to say. But there's still something that I want to share off the cuff, unscripted. I look around the room and I see so many people in leadership in this room. I see so many elected officials, state, county, city, neighboring villages, towns. There are so many people in this room who are not just lay people, not just the regular folks that Jonathan went out for a game with or met on the streets. There are so many people in this room who have leadership positions. And I want to say something to those of us in leadership, okay? Those of us, I don't know why I'm including myself as if I'm, okay. I have a title, I'm sorry, can't help it. For those of us in leadership positions, we are positioned in life to be on the giving end. People come to us with their problems. When I have a challenge with the city, I reach out to Jonathan, and Jonathan solves my challenges. When I've got a medical challenge, I go to my doctor, and my doctor is a healer to so many. So many of us in leadership positions, we are designed, we are shaped by our reality to be leaders and givers. That's who we are. When you spend that amount of time in public service, there's certain words that fade away from your lexicon, if you will. And that is, I need something. I need help. I need to talk to somebody. If we can all walk away from here, I say this especially to those in leadership, but this is applicable to everybody. There is no shame in asking for help. If you reach out to a friend and say, hey, XYZ is going on, I promise you, you will not end up on YouTube or Facebook. The amount of love that was poured out on social media for Jonathan in just the last couple of days, we've seen how much love there really is in this world, how much love there is in this room. Let's all make an effort to take advantage of that love. Let's all recognize that this world is a good world. Jonathan's utopian dream and vision for this world is not fantasy, it's real. People are good. People want to help. People want to support. That's real. That's true. Let's harness that power. Let's take advantage of it. Let's not allow those opportunities to help ourselves and help our communities and help those around us. Let those opportunities not go to waste. If I can ask everybody to please rise for El Malei Rachamim. We'll sing it in the Hebrew and then afterwards in the English. El Malei Rachamim, Shechein Bamroimim, Hamsei Menuchon Nechoino, Kanfei Ashchina, B'malois Kedoshim Utahirim, Kizoyar Oroki Hamazirim, Es Nishmas Yonesin Ben Abraham Ufreda, Shoylach Li'olamai, Ba'avur Shenadvu Tzedakah Ba'ad Askaras Nishmasai, B'gan Eden Tei Menuchasai, V'chein Bal Rachamim Yasdireyu B'seiser Knafav Li'olamim, V'yitzar B'tzrayim Achayim Es Nishmasai, Adonai Unachlasai, V'yanuach Al Mishkavai B'shalayim V'neimar Amen. In the English, O God, full of compassion, who dwells on high, grant true rest upon the wings of the divine presence in the exalted spheres of the holy and pure, who shine as the resplendence of the firmament to the soul of Jonathan, son of Alan and Phyllis, Yonatan ben Abraham Befreda, who has gone to his supernal world, for charity has been donated in remembrance of his soul. May his place of rest be in Gan Eden. Therefore, may the All-Merciful One shelter him with the cover of his wings forever, and bind his soul in the bond of life. The Lord is his heritage. May he rest in his resting place in peace, and let us say, Amen. Please give our attention to the funeral director. Yep. If the pallbearers can step forward, please.
I'd just like to point out the family will take calls this afternoon at Habad East Side, and also from the 10th to the 13th. Thank you. Cemetery portion will be private, but you're invited to see the family until 11 a.m. and then once again back at Habad East Side this afternoon. Thank you.
Excuse me, we'd like to ask folks to join the family at Chabad on the east side at 1 p.m. because we do need them to go to the cemetery.